Impact of Influence.
Covering true crime throughout the Southeast.
Hello, friend. Matt Harris and Seton Tucker. Again, we are always grateful that you spend time with us. You can go to Impact of Influence on Facebook to join in the conversation. From there, you'll be able to get over to the YouTube channel. It's getting up and running, part of the Evergreen podcast company. Please rate and share our episodes. Much appreciate that. We should give a little warning probably about today's episode because it is about a 14-year-old and a possible unaliving situation or a possible homicide situation. So we want to make clear before you enter this episode that it could be a trigger, could also be very emotional.
Yeah.
And we, again, are so grateful. We also want to thank the other podcast that has been dealing with this issue.
Yeah, Cast and Crime has done a bunch of TikTok videos on it that have kind of gone viral, and they reached out to us to look into this story because they really want to call attention to it and get the word out.
It is about the tragic shooting death of 14-year-old Kaden Thomas Lee Moses, and there are many questions about it. This happened in Clinton, South Carolina, and he was found dead on the night of December 30th, 2023 from a gunshot wound to the head. And there are questions, and we will get to those in just a minute.
So I want to introduce Erika Moses. She's the mother of Kaden Moses, who tragically died on December 30th of 2023.
Hello, Erika.
Hi, how are you guys?
We are well. Thank you for joining us because I know it's a difficult, I can only imagine how difficult it is to talk about this situation. However, I know that it's worth it to you because you want the story to be told to not only get answers, but also to make sure you honor your son, Kaden. So, again, thank you. Let's go back to
December 30th. Yeah, tell us about what was happening that day.
That morning, I went to work. When I got off of work, I went to the grocery store. I got groceries for dinner. I knew that there would be a lot of kids at the house. I have 5 of my own. And then my daughter's boyfriend was over, and my son, Kaden, had a friend over as well. So to make everything quick and easy, I made hot dogs and hamburgers and french fries for dinner. And cooking dinner, had a conversation, one of those life talks we have with our teenage kids to make sure, you're making the right decisions in life. And we all sit down together at the table and we all eat together. And we all ate together, had a good time. People were laughing, cutting up. And I had to go to bed early. I want to say I went to bed around 8:30. And I asked Kaden if he didn't mind putting up the leftovers, and we went over how to clean, the cast iron pan because that's what I cook with a lot. And he's like, yes, Mama, I know how to do it all. I know how to season it. And the last words I got to say to my son is, I love you, baby, good night. And he gave me a big hug, and he's like, Mama, I love you too. And I went to bed.
Now, before we get into what happened after that, the way you are painting the story of Kaden, it seems to be very kind of a rock solid kind of kid by the way you're talking about him. I love you, Mom. Thank you. Taking care of things, cleaning things up. Can you tell us a little bit about him and his personality?
Kaden is what the world needs more of. He had the biggest heart that you could ever dream of. Very loving, very kind. His mannerisms were, you know how parents get a call from school and you're like, oh no, what has my kid done? They're going to be in trouble. For Kaden, I would get phone calls saying, I just want to thank you. Your son has the best manners that I've ever seen come through here. he is always yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir, to everything, and he's a complete delight. He is extremely respectful. And those were the phone calls that I would get from school, and he is the type of person who, if it's freezing outside and all he had was his T-shirt and you had nothing, he's going to freeze and make sure you stay warm.
Now, where did he fall in the line of your kids? Kaden was the second.
He was second.
So did he dote on his younger siblings?
Yes. Him and his younger brother would play fight so much so that they would wrestle so much. It was awesome. My oldest daughter, who is almost 2 years exactly older than he is, she would still pin Kaden down. But yes, he has a very loving relationship with all of his siblings, and you can see it through all of the pictures, the smiles and the love, and how he was there. Of course, you have the sibling annoyingness that comes with any siblings, and he had that too. They all do, but in the essence of things, our home is a very loving home. We have two rules in our house, and that's it: love and respect. And if what you're doing is not loving or respectful, then we really need to rethink it. And he was loving and respectful and kind. It just very genuine. It wasn't like the fake kindness that people put on for other people to say, hey, I'm a good guy. No, he actually was a genuinely good person. He's not going to let you have a bad day. Even if he's having a bad day, he's going to put his stuff aside and make you smile. Figure out a way to do a goofy laugh or a little dance. And he was so goofy and had such a contagious laugh and gave the best hugs. He's an all-around amazing kid.
It says a lot about you and your ex-husband that you raised a kid like that, and what we're going to get to is going to be pretty emotional for you and all of us, I'm sure. But that kind of I needed that to set the stage, to give a face and personality to Kaden before we.
Yeah, I want to ask, what were his biggest hobbies? What did he like to do?
His favorite things were to be outside. He loved playing football. He took private lessons in baseball. So he loved baseball and football. He got it a little bit later, but has been playing football since flag football when you're 5 or 6 years old. He enjoyed anything outdoors. So that would be hunting, fishing. Everything about outside. He would build bike ramps through the woods. He would have trails, and he was always outside. He would not let me mow the grass, even though I love to do it. He would mow the grass, and he would weed eat, and he would take care of the chickens. And, he would be the person who was just always outside. He would rather be outside than cooped up inside.
And you're actually, when I spoke with you yesterday, you were working on building a nature trail through your property to honor him.
Oh, wow.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so that gives us the Kaden that we can know as we get into what transpired on that night, December 30th, 2023. You said you went to sleep 8:30. Kaden's like, I love you, and he's going to clean up from the dinner. Who all is in your house at that point?
In my home was my oldest daughter's boyfriend. He was waiting for her to get off of work. She would get off of work around 10 p.m. I think she got off a little earlier that night. Then we had my 12-year-old, well, she was 11 at the time, my 9-year-old, and this is at the time, they're all a year older now,
right.
and my 7-year-old, and then Kaden and his friend, and myself.
Okay. So you go to sleep. What do we know about what's happening after you go to sleep?
I was woken up by my daughter,
And
my
what-
oldest daughter.
And what time was that, approximately?
11:01.
And how did she wake up? How did she wake you up? And just walk us through what was happening at this point.
I was laying on my side. She came and she was shaking me and she was saying, Mama, 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 Kaden shot himself.
Oh, jeez.
And she was trembling and shaking and crying, and I just kept saying, what, and ran out of my bedroom, and I hit the wall on the way out, ran around the left side of the couch and then around the Christmas tree into Kaden's room. On my way, I could see my 11, 9, and 7-year-old standing on the other hallway in front of my 11-year-old's room. And they were screaming, they were crying. And I just ran into Kaden's room, and the first thing that hit me was a smell. There was this very odd, placeable smell, and then I could see my son, the back of my son's head, sitting up in his game chair, and he had been shot right beside his left temple, and there was blood coming out of it. His head was still sitting in his chair.
What do you do? Do you go into like do mode? You're like, let me try to see if I can render aid?
Yes, instantly. I start screaming his name. His arms are on the inside of his gaming chair, like his elbows are on the inside of this big racing gaming chair that he had got the Christmas before. And his hands were curled in on his lap, and his phone was on his lap. I picked his phone up. It said Haunted on it. It was a game that he had been playing. And I picked his phone up, and I called 911 off of his phone. And I could feel a heartbeat, and I start chest compressions. His eyes were swollen but partially open, and I could see movement.
The 911 call is probably the most difficult thing that I've ever listened to. I mean, you were just the sounds that you were making up, like it's very, it was very difficult to listen to, and it really put in the moment how chaotic and how displeasing that there was anything you could do to try to help this situation.
Did you feel like emotionally, were you people have these kind of situations, sometimes they feel like it's out of body experience, or feel like it's a dream, or feel like it's not really happening. What was your mindset, if you even can remember what it was like?
It didn't feel real. It just didn't. It didn't feel real at all.
Why would it? It's not something that any parent wants to come upon. And you, this is out of nowhere. You're half asleep. You've got also part of you is, okay, I've got to protect my other children. I assume that's part of your thought process because they're standing there, right?
They were in the other hallway, not in the door.
Not in the door.
And the dog was trying to.
There were 2 dogs.
And the dogs were in the room were they barking a lot? Were they?
They were trying to figure out what all the commotion was. Our golden retriever, he has since passed. He was just kind of running around in circles. At one point, I was screaming for, get the dogs out, get the kids out, get the dogs out, get the kids out. And at one point, he hit the chair that Kaden was sitting in, and his head slumped over to the side a little bit. And I picked his head back up, and I used my left hand, and that's when I could feel the crunch. There, when I picked his head up, and I could hear, I don't know where it went, but I could hear a pool of blood hit the floor.
And if I ask any questions that are too personal or in depth, just feel free to not answer or whatever. So that blood crunch, plop, up until that point, was there a lot of visible blood, like a spray all over the place, or?
I don't know what the room looked like. I was focused on Kaden. The only blood I saw was from his temple, and it was about an inch, maybe, trickled down. It was just a little bit of blood. And that's the only blood that I saw. I didn't notice any more blood until I was outside and they were getting me dressed, and I was covered in his blood. Oh,
but you weren't even realizing it because you're trying to save the life of your loved one, and you have all these other thoughts going on in your head.
And neighbor because there were a couple of 911 calls. And who got the neighbor?
My daughter. She ran out of the house first, and she got them, and they both came over. I didn't know they both came over. I just saw Chris, my neighbor. He was in the room with me. He touched Kaden's body too. He kept trying to feel for a pulse. He kept trying to tell me there was no pulse, but I could feel a heartbeat. I could feel my son's heart beating, and it was strong. He had a very, very strong heartbeat, and it was beating. And so I kept with a chest compression. And the other neighbor, his wife, she took the children back to her house.
And this is all before paramedics, law enforcement get there.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah. I believe that's what I've gotten from their statements. I don't know. Mm-hmm, I was in the room with Kaden.
So, how did your daughter come to find out? Did she hear something that she heard this gunshot, or how did she know that he had been shot?
She got home from work, and the reason her boyfriend was over is they didn't get to spend Christmas together, so they were doing Christmas gifts. And so they were Christmas gifts, and they heard what sounded like a picture falling off the wall, like furniture moving. A picture fell off the wall.
Okay.
So they didn't think anything of it, and waited a couple of minutes, and then decided to go see what that noise was. And she comes out of her room. She has a metal sign on her door with a K on it. It's hanging. Heard that is when the other kid walked out of Kaden's room and very expressionless, no emotion, just like it was a joke, said Kaden shot himself.
Well, I want to back it just up a little bit up. So this is the first time we've mentioned this, that there was somebody in the room with Kaden, which is his friend who is a minor. So we won't mention
We can't say his name.
his name. But we'll have to refer to him as
Just
something.
Friend. We put a
Friend.
name.
Yeah.
I guess Bob. Let's say Bob.
Okay, so Bob and Kaden were close friends, gaming friends. What do you think the relationship was like?
He was over here often.
Okay, so Bob comes out, and
Minutes go by. Minutes.
So he didn't come out right after that your daughter heard the noise.
He did not come out until he heard my daughter's door.
Now, let me zero in on the gun thing too. So there was, what kind of gun was it? Were there multiple guns in the room? Was there one gun? Was it Caden's gun? What was the gun situation?
It was technically Caden's father's gun, but Caden's hunting rifle that he used to go hunting with his father.
So Caden's very familiar with firearms and this
Extremely.
actual rifle.
Yes, it was a 243 bolt action rifle, and it is typically locked up, ammunition locked up separately. Yes.
But it wasn't locked up, at least at that point. Do you remember the last time you saw it locked up, or the last time you know he used it, or anything like that?
We are going through a separation or a divorce. We're at the tail end of a divorce, his father and I, and we do week on, week off. Mm-hmm. So I unlocked it for Caden to go to his father's. They were staying on a hunting property, and that's why he had it. And he was supposed to leave with his father because it was his father's week. He wasn't supposed to be home. He was homesick and wanted to stay what was supposed to be one night. But that next morning, he was supposed to leave with his father to go back hunting. And I would have left at 3:00 in the morning.
Okay, let's talk about where the ammo was. I think did you told me you saw the gun earlier that day, but it was not loaded?
I had seen it. He had it on his shoulder when he came back from his father's house, or from his father's. It was a day or two before.
And that's not unusual because he is a hunter. So he had done this for years. He knew how to handle guns. He knew how to handle a rifle. He knew safety precautions, that sort of thing.
But where was the ammunition at this point?
Locked up in what to be Caden's truck.
And did Caden have a key to the truck?
No. I have a copy of a key, and his father has a copy of a key. So that way his father is able to come and use the truck for hunting and be able to get the ammunition. But I always kept the guns locked away.
Do we know if the ammunition used was his ammunition, or the ammunition that was in that truck?
On a factual basis, I don't know.
Is it the same type of? Was it the same type of ammunition?
There was a box of ammunition left. It was in the truck in the middle console behind 2 energy drinks. It was on top. You can clearly, plain as day, see it through the window, which is not where it's normally kept. And SLED never collected that as evidence, so I don't know where the ammunition came from.
And so, where did you typically keep the key to the truck?
I would either keep it on my keychain that stayed inside my purse, or I have a very specific drawer in a dresser kind of hidden for that truck key, and then I have another place for the lock for where the guns are kept.
Now let me explain why we're going where we're going a little bit with this, because You have very big suspicions about, did Kaden actually take his own life? Now, there's only two people in that room. We're calling them Bob and Kaden. So the only witness that's alive is Bob. The SLED, and is it only SLED that's investigating it that came to your house, or other agencies involved?
Lawrence County Sheriff's Department and EMS were also here.
Okay, so did they ask any of the kids anything that night? Did they ask you for a statement that night? What was any of the investigation that was done that evening, if any?
I do not believe that the children were talked to. I don't know. I was kind of very out of it when they ushered me out of the house. That is the only time that I saw his friend that night. I don't remember him coming back inside or how he came back inside, because he was outside. He ran past me and he said, "I unloaded the gun," or "I unloaded the bullet," or it was something along those lines. And I was on the porch, and a deputy had told me my son was stable. So I thought that he was going to live.
Oh, geez.
And then they took me across the street. I believe my neighbors forced me to put clothes on. I was in pajamas, so I had a T-shirt on and shorts, no shoes. And it's freezing temperatures outside, and I couldn't feel any of it. But the person who told me my son had passed was the coroner. She was the only kind person that night.
I want to just quick stop for a second, because you said Bob, the kid that was in the room with Kaden, he says something to you along the lines of him touching the bullet or the ammunition, which
Correct.
is something kind of odd to say. That he didn't, just the bullet. He didn't say anything about the gun. He just talked about the ammunition, and he touched it.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, so what I was talking about with the keys, so the ammo was locked up in the truck. And after the accident, the keys to the truck were missing.
Oh.
Correct. We did not find them until months later.
Months later? Where did you find them?
My youngest son found them while cleaning up the laundry room underneath the washer machine on the left-hand side, so between the washer and the dryer underneath the washer machine.
Okay, so...
And what were the appearance of the keys when you found them?
Oh.
They appear to either have dried blood on them or a red tinge.
Well, did you contact law enforcement to let them know when you found these keys?
They don't return my calls, hardly. It takes weeks for me to get in touch with the agent who was taking over the case. Just like when I asked them to get the ammunition box that was in the truck, they said there was no point.
So the keys that were found, who have something red on them, they've not returned a call. They've never checked those keys. They've never checked the ammunition. They haven't really checked a lot of things. One thing that was done was an autopsy. And what were the findings rendered by that autopsy?
His manner of death was gunshot wound to the head. It was classified as a homicide, which in the state of South Carolina is the death of one by another.
And so there was no indication that the examination did not think that it was possible that he could have done this. It could have been self-inflicted.
I was told that I was told before I was given the report that it was 3 days after that there was zero way possible for Kaden to have even accidentally shoot himself. He is right-handed. A .243 bolt-action rifle is extremely long. They tested him for GSR. I do not believe anybody that was in my home that night was tested for any GSR.
Okay, so they didn't test any of your family members, your daughter's boyfriend, or the friend Bob. Nobody was tested.
Nobody. No clothes collected. No DNA collected. Crime scene was never roped off until after they took my son in an ambulance hours later.
Do you think it was because they thought that this was self-inflicted?
I do. And at the same time, it's still a crime scene. And I don't believe that they treated it as such.
Who was the agency that did the autopsy? Or was it a coroner? Was it a medical?
It was a coroner.
Okay.
It was done at Greenville Memorial, and the coroner I spoke with, her name was Ashley.
So the questions.
Did you initially think that this was self-inflicted because that was what had been told to you? Like, when did you? Was it only on? Did you only get the idea that this was not self-inflicted after you spoke with the coroner? After I spoke with the coroner, I was extremely confused. In my head, I was going over, accident. Is this, what happened? And then I remember just being really confused. And then when the coroner had told me that my son did not do it to himself, that there was zero way possible.
Zero.
Those were her exact words.
Well, let's talk about what was happening. Like, what were Bob and Kaden doing, like, before the gunshot?
They were playing roadblocks. Kaden was on FaceTime audio with his girlfriend, and Kaden's quote-unquote friend was on FaceTime video with his because he did not want to play Roblox anymore. And he was sitting on Kaden's left side on the ground.
And Kaden was in the gaming chair with his phone.
Kaden was in his gaming chair.
And when you saw him after Kaden died, where was his phone?
Kaden's phone in his lap.
And did anyone who was, since they were on FaceTime audio, did anybody, either one of the girlfriends, hear anything?
Kaden's girlfriend heard what are, and then heard a noise. And then his character stopped moving. And you have to have two hands to move a character in that game.
And so Bob comes out unemotional. Does Bob live near? But can Bob walk home, or does somebody have to come pick him up? How does that work?
He could technically walk to his girlfriend's house through the woods, because she lives that close. But he didn't. His parents were here, I believe, his mother.
Now, has Bob's girlfriend ever said anything about, like, did she hear anything, see anything like that? Or has anybody spoken to her?
She's never spoken.
Okay.
to me about it. She's spoken to other people, and it's a different story. So I don't know her story.
So we do not know if law enforcement has questioned any of the, like Bob or either one of the girlfriends.
They were scheduled for forensics interviews out of Greenwood, and they kept putting it off months and months. They kept rescheduling. And I do know that Kaden's girlfriend had a forensics interview. I took in my children and my daughter's boyfriend. His parents were there with me. I do know that the friend's girlfriend had an appointment. I don't know if she ever showed up. And then I was told that through his forensics interview, he pled the fifth.
And that's Bob.
Bob, yeah, your friend, right? So the SLED is the one who makes the ruling on this, not your county or local municipality. And they rule death by suicide, even though the autopsy says
no
otherwise.
They didn't say. That's not what they said.
Oh, they didn't?
No.
What did they say?
Homicide.
SLED says that.
Yes.
But what's like? Okay, so I want to backtrack just a second. So obviously these interviews are taking months. What's going through your mind? Are you concerned about what's happening with this investigation at the time?
Correct. I had to beg for them to come out. I had to constantly call and get sent to voicemail after voicemail after voicemail. It would take me a while before I could get in touch with the agent who would hardly speak to me. They did not want to collect the evidence. They supposedly walked the woods. I was with them, and you found no casings. The agent brought up a damaged jacket, asked if I had noticed a damaged jacket located behind Kaden's body.
Okay, let's talk about this jacket, because I think there's a big tie-in. Because tell us how loud this type of rifle would sound if it was shot inside.
It would be extremely loud. It would almost feel like a firework is going off.
And so you get asked about this jacket, and what are they? This damaged jacket. What happens with the damaged jacket?
And what do they mean by damage, too? By the way, yeah.
They didn't explain.
Okay.
They just asked if I had noticed it. I make my own assumptions on what that damaged jacket was used for. I brought it up when I had the meeting with the solicitor, the coroner, the agent, the victim's advocacy, in that meeting where they were telling us that they were closing the case without giving us any facts to why. But I brought up the damaged jacket, and she acted confused, like she had no idea what I was talking about.
And you don't know that do you know whose jacket it was?
Yeah, was Kaden missing a jacket, or did Bob come to your house wearing a jacket?
Kaden did not own a leather jacket.
And was Bob wearing a jacket when he came to your house?
Sweatshirt and jacket, yes.
And was his jacket leather?
I believe so.
And so the sound was more muffled than it would normally be, so we can connect.
And you would expect it to be, because
it had to be muffled, because for a rifle to go off inside of a home, you're going to not only hear it very loudly, you're going to feel it.
And what was the proximity of your daughter's room to Kaden's room? in your home?
They have connecting walls, so she was maybe 10 or a little bit more feet away from her, where she was standing and where Kaden was sitting.
And where did the bullet go?
Through the other connecting wall to my younger son's room, where he and his little sister were playing on their phone, or on my daughter's boyfriend's phone.
And they didn't hear it.
No, they said it sounded like a light bulb blew, like the light bulb sounded. A light bulb busted.
So did SLED never, the investigation, as far as you know, they didn't take the angle of where the bullet went, because the bullet hole's obvious in the wall, or things like that?
You have the bullet hole on both sides of the wall and where it lodged in the ceiling.
Did they take the bullet?
I don't believe that they did. I believe it's still here.
So, and the frustration here is you mentioned a victim's advocate. Has that person been helping you, do you feel, or has it not really been, you felt like an advocate?
So Erika referenced, tell us what the current status of this investigation is.
Closed.
When did they close it? Do you remember what month or? But months after. And they just said closed. They didn't say, they didn't rule it anything, still homicide, but just closed. And that's all they tell you, it's closed.
I believe they're supposed to give me a written statement as to why it was closed, and I was never given anything. The only thing I was given was a coroner's report that had the toxicology, the death investigation, and it was 3 different papers inside of that report. 3 different reports inside of the folder that they handed me, and that's all that they gave me.
And we're coming up on a year in a little bit here, because it was December 30th.
And so since then, you have sent multiple FOIA requests to responding agencies, and what has been the response to your requests?
The only response I got was from an assistant attorney for Lawrence County Sheriff's Department, Darby Jackson. She sent me a letter and called and said that I could have audio for, I think it was $1,009.60 or something around
Which
that
is
range.
crazy to me. Audio. It's not like someone is standing at a copy machine making copies of things.
And I've done FOIAs, and I've not ever seen $1,000. I haven't done and FOIA, by the way, who don't know, is a Freedom of Information Act, generally used for journalistic purposes, but anybody can do it.
Anybody can file it.
But that's
in her case, she's trying to get answers about the death of her son,
Right.
and she's filing these. A grieving mother, and then they're saying $1,000 to.
To hear your own 911 call.
I was telling my husband about that this morning, and he was like, "What?
That's insane.
It's absolutely
it's insensitive, and that there's no reason they need $1,000."
So another thing, though, that what they're saying is some of the information is not available to you because it's involving minors.
Involving a minor. SLED had sent me a letter, 2 letters actually, one not replying to a FOIA request, one replying to a letter I had in July, and it was September, I believe. I got it in September, and it said basically I cannot obtain any information. I can't subpoena it in court. I can't ask for anything. I could be punished by a misdemeanor, $500, and or 6 months in jail.
If you got the information.
For asking for my son's information.
But this seems I have many legal questions about this. I want to bring somebody on to kind of discuss the legalities of issues when they do involve minors. But it just seems, it was ruled a homicide. Everyone is saying this. It's not even a year. The case is closed. We know how many people were in the house.
Well, he sent me also a letter that said the case can be reopened with credible evidence, with new credible evidence, with the word credible in bold. And that leads me to suspicions.
Well, I have reached out to SLED, but that was just yesterday. I have not heard anything. I do plan on reaching out to the solicitor's office to find out where they are on this. What has been your communication with the solicitor's office?
At the solicitor's office, I had to go down there because I was told by the assistant superintendent of the school district that this child who is now in the high school was deemed innocent, that he had a letter from SLED saying that he was considered innocent. And I went to the solicitor's office to see if I could see this letter. And that's not what the letter said at all. And
they showed you the letter?
Yes.
And what did the letter say?
The letter said that the case is considered closed for the time being.
Do you feel like a factor in the closure of this case has to do with the lack of investigation by law enforcement? You said what?
Extreme negligence. The solicitor, I asked if there was a shell left in the rifle, because with the 243, you have to eject it yourself. It does not automatically eject. And asked if there was one left in it. I wasn't allowed to have an answer to that. So I then asked, can you not pull a fingerprint off of one if one was left inside the gun? And he told me, you can't do that. You just cannot get a fingerprint off of that, and that's not true. That's not factual. I was also told by SLED that the reason they're closing the case is because in the state of South Carolina, you can only interview a child one time and one time only. Cannot re-interview a child.
A minor.
And because a minor, yes, thank you for that correction. And because this individual chose to not speak, there wasn't enough evidence for a case, even though there's the hard evidence. You could walk in my house right now and still follow the bullet trajectory path.
And the ruling by the coroner, etc.
Yeah, it seems like there is quite a lot of circumstantial evidence that could potentially build a case. Potentially. Investigated.
Yeah. So, yes, there's a lot of questions. A lot of questions for sure.
And I want to dig more into whether this whole minor can't be interviewed. What happens if a minor pleads the fifth? Again, we're not making any accusations about this person. I mean, we just are thinking that it needs to be looked into more.
So before we let you go, tell me what you miss most about your son.
His hugs. The way we would have a competition in the morning to see who would say "I love you" mostest. It's been a competition since he was a child. And our whole family does it. "I love you mostest" is our saying. And we say it so much that other family members have adopted it. But it's always been a competition. It's just his presence, his smile, his contagious laugh. Him laying in my lap and me being able to rub his forehead and take my fingers and run it through his hair when he's having a hard day because he's way too big for me to hold him like a baby. He towered over me, but he would lay in my lap, and we would watch family movies and, pop popcorn over the stove and bonfires and, quality family time. My family isn't whole anymore.
Does it still not feel real to you?
No, it still doesn't feel real.
And you're trying to grieve. You've also got anger because of the lack of at least some empathy from the law enforcement, as it appears to
Lack
you.
of due diligence.
Yep.
Lack of doing your job. That is your job.
I was speaking to another mother who lost her child today, and similar circumstances where I'm not sure that law enforcement really did everything that they needed to do. But what she told me is that dead people still have protections. They still are entitled to due process under the law.
They're victims.
They're victims.
Well, potentially, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing this story. I know it can't be easy, and I'm sure that you look at pictures of Kaden every single day.
I have the necklace that was given to me my first Mother's Day without him here. That was given to me from him, is what they said, that he would want me to have it. And it's a picture of him, and it says, "I love you mostest, Mama." And I have that necklace that I can take him with us wherever we go. We still try to keep him included in holidays because those are so hard.
I'm sure this one is going to be extremely difficult for you and your whole family.
Christmas was the last holiday he got to have.
Well, we were going to do follow-ups on this, Erika. Again, it's impossible to understand what you're going through. We appreciate your time. We're going to keep the story alive as best we can. And you know that, Kaden's right there with us and you trying to figure this out. And just lots of loves and hugs to your entire family, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for helping give Kaden a voice.
Thank you, Erika.
We will do everything we can to make that happen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Erika. Bye-bye. Hard to even imagine. We were going to have some more episodes about this, sorting out some of the legalities and such, and we appreciate that. So you want to chime in and you have thoughts on this, or you know people who might have answers, impact of influence on Facebook. On Facebook, you'll get rid of the YouTube channel, and we hope you will rate and share and comment. It is much appreciated. As always, we're grateful, friend.